Hey, you guys, welcome back to BALLCAP Sports. Today I have with me Brian Drake, co-host of the Fantasy Hustle podcast, the Fantasy Football Hustle podcast, and Fighting Chance Fantasy. Brian, thank you for joining me today. How are you, buddy?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. I know football season's winding down. Only the Super Bowl left to go, but it's always good to talk fantasy or reality kind of football here, man. Jim, what's going on?
Just another day, living the dream here on YouTube, putting out more sports content. I'm in the middle for anybody who's going to hop on and check this out. We are doing the 2020 baseball projection. That's the big thing right now, so stay on that. And any other news that breaks, we're covering that. So make sure you hop back and subscribe for more information. But it's not about me here. This is about you, Brian. I appreciate this again. I wanted to do an interview. I'm trying to start this interview series with people in the media who are providing content and doing things. We did one with Ernie Acosta last week from WFAN, the producer of the Joe and Evan show, now 2 to 6 on WFAN in New York. And I want to have you come on because you provide the fantasy football insight to your viewers, your subscribers, and it's sort of an interesting playing field, the fantasy land, because there's a lot of people doing it. It's not easy to get into because you got to do your research, you got to put in time, and there's a lot that go into it. So wanted to talk with you about that because I also wanted, viewers who may be thinking, hey, I'm kind of into this too. I want to get started in it. It's good to hear from people who are doing it. So with that, first thing I wanted to ask you was, how'd you get started? How did you get into this whole thing? What was your motivation? What was your driving force? How did you get into it? How'd you get started?
Really, I have a degree in broadcasting from Oswego State University. It's a small school about 45 minutes north of Syracuse, New York. And I've always loved sports broadcasting, always loved the media, always loved journalism. And my career obviously isn't in that because there's no money in it, folks. Anybody who goes to school and says, hey, I'm going to go in communications or broadcasting, you're an idiot. Get out of that. It's not going to happen. Jim can attest.
You'll end up in sales.
Yeah. Jim and I worked together in a sales department at a radio station a long, long time ago. And so I was just pretty active on Twitter. And I started talking to a guy, Ryan Hallam, who runs Fighting Chance Fantasy. He's also with Fantasy Alarm and knows a bunch of guys in the industry. And I would just kind of like tweet at him. And after a while, he was like, hey, man, you want to get in a mock draft? I go, sure, I'll jump in that. He had an open spot. And I was just providing content and talking through the draft. He goes, hey, you kind of know what you're talking about. You ever thought about writing? And I told him my background. I'm like, yeah, I love radio. I used to be on the radio. I want to get back into that with some podcasting. And Ryan and his partner Steve Rappin over at Fighting Chance are the super nicest guys you'll ever meet in fantasy. They said, hey man, come on our site, write whatever you want, we'll give you a shot. And I wrote a couple things, they liked it, and I started doing a little podcasting for them. They're like, here, if you want to do a show, do a show. I went out and purchased, just because I'm a radio nerd, I got like this Audio Technica headphones and mic, and then I bought a MacBook Pro, and I got way too overboard in it. But if you're going to have a podcast, and this is the first piece of advice I'll give to anybody out there, if you want to have a podcast, you have to invest in yourself. You have to invest in good equipment. You have to sound and look professional. Like Jim's got the great stuff here on StreamYard, as you see all the logos on this side and everything.
At the bottom.
You've got to look professional, and this is the next phase of it, and going into YouTube, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. But yeah, so I started going with Fighting Chance, and then I met a guy, I'm skipping ahead, named Dwayne McFarland. Same kind of thing. I was on Twitter talking to guys, and I go, man, this kid is putting out good content. I say kid, he's a year or two older than I am. And I'm like, hey man, what are you doing? Do you want to come be a guest on my first ever podcast? He had at this time 200 Twitter followers. He's putting out all this great content and these utilization reports and just breaking down snaps and all this. I'm like, dude, you're legit. Let's talk. We did our first show. Ryan from Fighting Chance said, this is great. You guys should just team up and just do a show. And he didn't have anything going on at the time. Fast forward now 2 years later, he has not 200 followers, but 15,000 followers, and he works for EstablishTheRun.com and Matt Waldman's website and Football Guys, and now he's a huge name in fantasy football. But yeah, that's kind of how we got started in. It was just by being active and talking to the right people, and Twitter is a huge help in that now, because you can have one-on-one contact with anybody. If you're not a jack off, basically, they'll converse with you back and forth. But that's a big issue too.
So heading into a show, when you're doing a show, what is the process? What do you do to get ready for a show?
So my show, the Fantasy Football Hustle, we tape on Tuesdays. We only do it once a week. Maybe down the line we'll do another show, but we're busy. We're guys with lives. We go, let's do a show. Initially, it was on Tuesdays because we wanted to have the waiver wire stuff and kind of prep you for the next week while looking back at what just happened Sunday, Monday. But it's not like just you wake up and do it that day, as you well know. So you're watching games. Thursday, you're watching games. Saturday, whatever games might be on. Sunday, you're watching all those games. Monday, you now have to digest everything that just happened. And a little tip out there, Roto World does a fantastic, really quick podcast. John Norris and the guys over there that just kind of breaks down every single game and tells you what happens. And the whole show is like half an hour long. So I highly recommend that. But you've got to now digest all that stuff. And then you write up, all right, who are we going to talk about? Why are we going to talk about them? How is this going to be a little bit different than any other podcast out there? He's doing a boatload of research for his articles. We just kind of come together. And now after doing it for 2 years together, we have a groove. And it's almost like now we don't even really have to talk about what we're going to do. I have my notes. He has his. I know some shows, they write up a whole big log. All right, we're going to do this, X, Y, Z. Dwayne and I don't even do that anymore. We have such a simpatico relationship now where it's like, all right, we know the format. Let's go talk about Atlanta. Let's go talk about Matt Ryan. What's he doing? And then I know he's so prepared. Whatever I throw at him, he's going to be able to handle. But it's a lot of work to not sound like an idiot on the air, because it's real easy. And these football fans out there and on fantasy Twitter will call you out in a heartbeat if you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's true. What do you think, and maybe that's it, what do you think is the most challenging aspect of hosting a show of this nature? Is it being prepared and sort of knowing a little bit of everything? What's the most challenging aspect, you think?
It's trying to be yourself. I've noticed that from day one until today. It's something I still battle, and I want to be Brian Drake. I don't want to be John Hansen. I don't want to be Jeff Manns. I don't want to try to be a caricature of somebody else who's doing fantasy football radio. And it's easy to do and just say like, hey, I'm going to go on here and sound like a guy that I listen to on Sirius XM. Like, you got to be your own voice, and the people will call you out again instantly if you don't know what you're talking about and you're just regurgitating what you heard on someone else's show. There's 8 bazillion fantasy football podcasts out there. Anybody can give you guys to pick up, but we want to give you the why. And I think that's what separated our show is I can present things in a way, and Dwayne can knock them out of the park with his information that gives people a lot more insight as to why am I adding this guy? Why is this someone to target? Why does this offense do this? As opposed to just like, hey, pick this guy up because he scored 2 touchdowns last week.
Sure. What do you enjoy the most about this, about hosting the football podcast? Is it the just living in the football world there for a little while? Is it, using your degree that you got from last week? What do you enjoy the most about what you're doing?
It's nice. It's nice just to be on the air again. It's nice to use that degree, and any idiot can go start a podcast. It's not rocket science. There's a lot of people who have never went to school for broadcasting who do excellent jobs with a podcast and YouTube and whatever. But I just like having an outlet to give my views and kind of interact with people. I'm amazed. 2 years ago, I was just some schlub guy, in sales. Now I've got guys asking me fantasy advice. They're thanking me. Hey man, I won my league because I really loved your draft plan. Thanks for getting back to me and interacting with me, because a lot of these big guys won't. So
Right.
just kind of building that relationship with other football fans out there. Do I have all the answers? Am I Matt Berry or Mike Clay? No, I'm not. But, I'll interact with you. You tweet me. I'm going to tweet you back.
Yeah.
At Drake Fantasy, by the way.
There you go. So for anybody who's thinking about getting started doing this, thoughts, advice that you would give them before they take the first jump?
Yeah, if you're going to start a podcast, you've got to know off the bat, nobody's going to listen off the bat. Right? You're going to have shows where literally 4 people listen, and 2 of them are probably you looking at it on your phone, opening it up. There's so much content out there. You can't get discouraged. I know our first year, we would look at the numbers and we're like, man, we're doing a really good show. Why is nobody listening to this? It's just because they're inundated with a billion other podcasts out there. So my advice, like I said earlier on, look professional, sound professional. I would try to stay away from swearing a lot. When we started, we were like, hey, it's a podcast. We can say F this and, MF or whatever you want to say. But then you got to realize, if you really get down to it and you want people listening in their car, maybe with their kids, they're at work, they're running, they're doing whatever, you can't have, the F-bombs going left and right. I'm a huge Howard Stern fan, but I can't listen to Howard Stern with my kids in the car.
Right.
And if you want to grow your platform and maybe get some sponsors, they don't want to see that explicit title next to it, because you're dropping the, F-bomb every 30 seconds. So try to be clean, and, if you're not having fun with it, don't do it. Don't make it a job. If you're like, oh my God, I got to go do this podcast. If you miss a week, nobody cares. Like, find topics you like, find angles that you like, because you can just come out and say, oh, I just want to talk fantasy football. And that might be fine for you. But if you want to grow it and do anything really with it, you've got to have an angle. You can't just be Joe Blow sitting in his basement like me, because chances are it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah. That's good advice. You got to be prepared for nothing in the beginning. I think my first few podcasts, I'm sure nobody heard them. I didn't even listen to it. And then, even coming to YouTube, the first video I put up on YouTube, I think got like 2 or 3 views. And then I did a video for Fred McGriff. This is a very timely comment by me, because the MLB's Hall of Fame results come out tomorrow. And last year was the final year that Fred McGriff was on the ballot, and he didn't get close. And I believe that Fred McGriff is a Hall of Famer. So I did a video. This is my second YouTube attempt, and I put a lot of time into it. I did the whole Ken Burns effect thing with it, where I had the pictures panning and zooming and, in and out and all that stuff. So
that's what you got to do nowadays.
Well, and to make sure it got some views, I actually advertised it. I didn't advertise it on YouTube though. I started this Facebook page. It's called Gymnasium, Gymnasium, because my name and everything, which I basically do nothing with these days. But I advertised it on Facebook. I didn't know how to even advertise it on YouTube yet. I advertised it on Facebook, and it turned up from, I think I spent $100.
Wow. And
I got 300 views, which is not good. Even that was not good. So you got to be, like you said, you got to be ready in the beginning for there to be not a whole lot of action, and you got to earn it. You have to earn it by, being there more often, out preparing the other guys, having an angle that, somebody else doesn't have, and just hammering it home, So it's good advice. Let's get into some more fun questions. Aside from the work aspect of it, the podcast aspect of it, let's get into you personally. Tell me who your favorite athlete is. And I know who your favorite sport team is. For anybody who doesn't know, he's an Eagles fan. Yeah. All you got to do is go on Twitter and you'll see that he's an Eagles fan. That's cool. Tough year for the Eagles, but you know what? Hey, injuries, what are you going to do?
They won the division. It's not that tough.
That's right. That's a good point. Even with it, even with all that, they still got the division. I think they could have had a better year, but there's always next year. Favorite athlete? Who's your favorite athlete and why? Across all sports.
When I was younger, I used to really kind of admire athletes, and I would look up to him and be like, oh man, I loved Randall Cunningham. He was, he was a big favorite of mine. I also loved Deion Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was great. And then once I got to college and I was having media access to things like Syracuse University football and basketball, and I'm like, I'm the same age or older than these people. And then you get out of school and you grow and you're just aging. You realize, like, not that I don't care about these guys, but like, I'm not going to idolize these kind of guys because most of them are, jackasses, and they're just not great people in general. If I had to say who's my favorite athlete right now, I would probably say Carson Wentz. I love him, love Nick Foles.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm cheering for Andy Reid as we go forward here towards the Super Bowl. But yeah, I got really out of it. Jeter I liked a lot. I got a little Jeter thing over my shoulder here. But it's tough for me now. I mean, what do you think? You watch baseball and you see all this going on. We had the steroid era now. We got this Astros cheating scandal. And deep down, all these guys are fighting to get that edge. Whatever they can do, ethically or not, they're going to do to try to get ahead. It's tough to be like, oh, I love this guy. He's so good, because in essence, he doesn't care about you. He doesn't care about the town he plays in. He's there for a paycheck.
Yeah. I find that most people, when I ask them who their favorite athlete is, it's somebody from when they were a kid. Because it's almost impossible to eclipse that. My favorite athlete of all time is Roberto Alomar. And that is from 91, 92, 93. So that's when I was 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. And nobody's going to eclipse him. I'm a Blue Jays fan. I'm a Bills fan. Josh Allen, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., no matter how great they are, Josh Allen could end up being the best quarterback in Bills history.
Right.
And he's probably still not going to eclipse Roberto Alomar. There's something about those players that you grow up with. I think I heard an interview with Bob Costas, and he was talking about interviewing players. And interviewing players once he got into the media and had been in it for a while, and he was a veteran in media, and guys like Mike Trout or the greats of the game, right? If they weren't the guys he grew up watching, it didn't really bother him to interview them. But when he would try to talk to Mickey Mantle or Joe DiMaggio or somebody he idolized as a kid, he has a tough time. He would kind of get jitters about it. And that's the thing is, you get to a certain age and you can have guys that you root for and that you call your favorites, but you kind of have a short rope with them because you just never know.
Yeah,
you never know because if they're on your favorite team, Vlad Guerrero Jr. could be gone from the Blue Jays in 5 years.
Sure. I mean, you look at Antonio Brown, what a clown he is now.
Yeah.
And there's people with Antonio Brown jerseys and they're defending him on social media. And it's like, crazy. You realize he's an idiot. Like, yeah. And I don't know if you've watched the new Aaron Hernandez
I have
thing on Netflix.
Yep.
And you see the fans standing outside the courtroom. It's the same with OJ. And he's getting bussed in. He's under arrest. And people are like, we love you, Aaron. We believe in you. You're not guilty. You're an idiot. What are you doing? Like, he's just a human being, and he's guilty of multiple murders.
Yeah.
But you're going to hang out because he plays for your team, so he's good. Like, no,
Yeah, when you're a kid, you hold on to that. Adults that hold on to it, you know what? Hey, if you can hold on to that as an adult, I guess more power to you. I'm not able to. If I thought Mark McGwire was amazing until the steroids thing came out. Like Mark McGwire, what was it? Summer of 97, 98, whatever it was, when he broke the home run record. This was before anybody knew about the steroids. Like, I would probably put Mark McGwire in my top 5 favorite baseball players, right? But then the steroid thing comes out, and I was old enough at that point where I was like, oh, yeah, I'm out, dude. And I don't know, you get to an age where you just kind of get out on guys. And yeah, that's the tricky thing with this Astro stuff going on, the cheating thing. Like, if you liked Alex Bregman before, I mean, unless you're in Houston, unless you're a Houston diehard, you might kind of be out on guys like Bregman and Altuve and Justin Verlander. I think Verlander comes away looking like a big ass here, just because he's always been an outspoken guy, always outspoken about things being done the right way. He was very outspoken this last season about the balls and the condition of the balls being, different from the years before.
Mhm.
That's why they had more home runs. But Verlander's said nothing about this whole thing. Now he's on it. How can he? But something, right? So I don't know. It's kind of interesting with athletes as you get older, guys who are your favorites and
everybody likes them when they're on their team. When you're on somebody else's team, it's like, oh, that guy's dirty. When he's on your team, he just plays hard. He plays to the whistle.
Right.
Everybody in Syracuse hated Patrick Ewing. If you were a Georgetown fan, you'd love him. He's the greatest player of all time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to ask you this one because I know you're a Cuse fan.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite Cuse basketball player?
Oh boy.
Yeah. I'll give you a minute to search the memory banks because this could go all the way back to the 90s, the John Wallace days.
Yeah.
So you had a couple different eras of really good Syracuse teams. You had that 96 team with Wallace and Otis Hill and Todd Bergen and Sims. And then you kind of had a lull there. And in that lull, we had like Preston Shumpert and Eton Thomas and Ryan Blackwell. And then we had another spike with Carmelo and McNamara and Warwick. And now we're kind of back in another lull. Who's your favorite Cuse player?
We could talk SU basketball for 20 minutes here. Maybe we will. But it's funny, side note, my daughter in her kindergarten class, one of the teaching assistants is Preston Shumpert.
Really?
Yes.
That's cool.
She's like, oh yeah, Mr. Shumpert's in there. He towers over these tiny kindergartners.
He was a tall dude, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe it's a lame answer, but Jerry McNamara, and I don't know if I liked him as much when he was a freshman, but I respected him so much when he left because he played on some pretty mediocre Syracuse teams.
He had an amazing run in the Big East tournament. Right.
Teams that had no shot to make the NCAAs, and he put them on their back, and he fought hard.
Yeah.
And, he had that famous Jim Boeheim quote of, we wouldn't have won 10 bleeping games without Jerry McNamara. And the fight that he showed, and I respect that. I was at his senior day, and I remember they bust in kids from like his hometown in Scranton, and they came on the floor like the elementary school, and they like sang a song, and they showed a little like video montage, and I teared up. I watched it. I was like, man, this is getting to me.
Right.
So for what he did for the program, and on a side note, I don't think he should be the head coach when Boeheim leaves in 2-3 years, whatever.
I know it might be going that way though. I don't know. So let me ask you this: outside of the NFL, what other sports? Everyone hears you talk about football all the time. What other sports are you into? What else do you follow closely?
I mean, personally, I play a ton of like bar league softball. I play a little golf. I used to play more, but it's funny. I don't follow golf or baseball much at all. I try to stay up on some college hoops. The NBA, forget about it. I couldn't tell you 5 things that are going on. Like I flipped on a game last night and I'm watching. I'm like, oh my God, LeBron has been in the league for 17 years, whatever it is.
Something
it's crazy.
Like that, yeah.
I listened to Colin Cowherd years ago, and he had a really great anecdote about trimming your sports tree. And it's really true. When I was 2021, I could tell you about every team in every conference of college football, basketball, who the studs were, because you're at the age where you have nothing going on. You got ESPN on in your dorm or whatever every hour of the day, and you can just talk sports. Like, hey, you want to watch, UCLA against Washington at 11 o'clock at night with your buddies and drink a beer. And you can like, oh, I know about the power forward. Now it's like, dude, I got 2 kids. I'm watching the NFL. I don't even watch most of the Syracuse football games if they're bad because I don't have time for it. So SU football I'm into, or SU basketball, excuse me. Even SU lacrosse. I get into SU lacrosse. I kind of dig them. But professionally, outside of football, I just don't have time to care. I'll watch Major League Baseball playoffs. We'll have Yanks games on in the background, but outside of the Yankees, like I'm not following the rest of baseball. I don't have time.
Yeah, no. When you have kids, like I know you do, you got a job, if you're trying to do a show, I think it really becomes tricky to go beyond one sport. I'm in a fortunate position right now where I'm staying at home, so I've got time to devote to multiple sports. So anybody who's following my page, they're going to see baseball, they're going to see football, they're going to see a little bit of basketball. Now that football season's winding down, I'm going to do a little more hoops talk, but that's only because during the day, all I'm doing is kind of looking up sports stuff, sports news, right? I've got time to do it, watch highlights and things like that. If I go get myself another 9 to 5, that's not going to happen. Instead of doing 2 to 3 videos a day, I'm probably going to go to maybe 1. So you got a busy life, you got to trim the tree. You're right.
I'm always leery of guys in the fantasy industry, and I'm sure there's some guys who do it and do it well. But the guys who are like covering every sport and doing like DFS content, like, hey, here's all your DFS baseball stuff. And then, now we're into football. Here's your football advice. It's like, you can't be covering it as in-depth because you're still in baseball mode. You can't be following all these football transactions and all that. Like, you're so late to the game, but hey, people make money doing it.
ESPN a few years ago moved Matthew Berry off of baseball and put him on to football. And he was great doing baseball. And it was kind of, as a consumer of the ESPN content, it was kind of disappointing because he was great to listen to all year round. And then they moved him to just football. And but the demand that football puts on you, it warranted it.
Yeah.
Let's get into some of your thoughts on what happened yesterday. We'll talk a little bit about some of what's going on. We had the Chiefs get over the Titans, and we had the Niners make Aaron Rodgers and the Packers look just not ready for that game. I went into it feeling like we were going to come out of it with a Chiefs-Packers, revisiting that Super Bowl one thing for this year. Didn't happen. But what's your takeaways from what happened yesterday on Championship Sunday?
We haven't done a show in 3 weeks for the Fantasy Football Hustle since the regular season ended, so I'm dying to get some stuff out. It played out exactly as I thought it would.
Yeah.
Green Bay was a fraud. They're a fraud to me all season. I saw a bad Eagles team go in there and demolish them. I saw them get blown out once by this 49ers team. They're very limited on weapons. They couldn't stop the run all season long. And as someone who has to follow the game weekly, I felt like I had a better feel on this than some of these national reporters who kind of just helicopter in, and it's like, oh, hey, Green Bay's in the title game. Must be the Green Bay team of old. And Aaron Rodgers, he's still here. And no, this team can't stop the run. They're going to get it run down their throat. And people, now let's go over to San Francisco. Everyone goes, man, that Raheem Mostert guy was cut by 7 teams. He must, what idiots they must have been. The Bears cut him twice. He was on the Eagles, the Browns, this, that. Maybe Raheem Mostert wasn't that good. Maybe it's the scheme. If you watch San Francisco all year long, it's not one guy. They got Tevin Coleman doing stuff. They had a freaking guy named Jeff Wilson Jr. scoring touchdowns in the middle of the season. This is the outside zone run game that Kyle Shanahan had in Atlanta that should have won them a Super Bowl 3 years ago. It's the same offense.
Yeah.
And he's implemented it now. He's got really good players. And any running back they put in there with those holes in that system is going to produce. Whether it's, if Jerick McKinnon was healthy, he'd be in there doing the same thing.
Right.
Coleman got hurt. So it's not just Mostert. He's a nice story. But that's my thought on San Francisco.
I'll tell you this about that game. It's the weirdest stat lines out of that game. Jimmy Garoppolo, 6 out of 8. 6 complete passes, 8 pass attempts for 77 yards. That's insane. And Mostert went over 200 yards, and they ran the ball down their throat. But their quarterback in a quarterback league went 6 out of 8, 77 yards. Conversely, Aaron Rodgers, 31 out of 39. That's pretty good. 326 yards, but the 2 interceptions, the fumble lost, kind of did him in. Just the stat lines from that game it's just, to me, bizarre. But,
It's a team that had to throw versus a team that didn't. And a lot of people want to compare this to Baltimore and Tennessee, who had a quarterback that let's be honest, they're trying to hide. You're trying to hide Ryan Tannehill because you don't want him throwing the football. Jimmy Garoppolo is a capable passer. He can absolutely throw the ball. They've got weapons. He's done it during the season. They just had a game plan of, we're just going to kill you with this running game, and you're never going to stop it. So why, at that point, why stop? Just keep handing the ball off, which is amazing. When you look at Tennessee in that Kansas City game, people go, why didn't they just give Derrick Henry the ball 40 times and just run it like they did earlier? Well, you can when you have a lead, but you have to stop the other team. Derrick Henry doesn't play defense. So as soon as you get down by 10 points, Derrick Henry is useless because they're going to keep scoring. If your defense doesn't keep up, which they didn't, Kansas City runs away from you, Derrick Henry's useless. And now all of a sudden, oh, crap, we got to have Ryan Tannehill bail us out? Yeah. Good luck. Everyone wanted to give him a big contract. Give me a break.
And Derrick Henry, he still got his carries. He got 19 carries. The last couple of weeks, 19 carries got him 150 yards. This time, 19 carries got him 69. So Kansas City did enough to stop him. And then this game, to me, when I was watching it and then looking back, it was just sort of opportunistic. Kansas City took advantage of the opportunities, and it really started in the second half. The defense stepped up for KC. KC got the ball to start the half, didn't do anything, gave it back to Tennessee. That was Tennessee's opportunity, and they didn't do anything with it. They kick it right back to Kansas City. Kansas City goes down and scores, and from there, Tennessee just couldn't keep up. And that's when Derrick Henry kind of becomes neutralized. So the opportunities, it really was the start of the second half. Kansas City took advantage of theirs. Tennessee didn't, because I feel like Henry got his chances. That just the defense, KC's defense, did enough. I mean, you knew Kansas City's offense was going to go and score some points.
Sure,
Tennessee had to try to keep up, and Tennessee had a great run. I mean, they've got a lot to look forward to next year with Derrick Henry. Wasn't this the first year that Derrick Henry really got his chance to shine as the feature back? He's always had to split carries. It was DeMarco Henry or it was Dion Lewis when they brought him in. Hasn't he always had to split his carries? You probably know more than me. I'm trying to remember, but he's never had the chance to be, all right, this guy's getting 350 carries and he's going over 1,500 yards. This was the first year that really happened, right? He's had the ball every year. For
the most part, they've been a pretty mediocre team. Yeah. But they had Marcus Mariota at quarterback, and he's been in and out of the lineup the past few years. So he had no stability at quarterback. So when they had to throw the football, they couldn't. Tannehill, to his credit, when he needed to make a big throw, like in that Buffalo game, he made the one throw to that tight end on the drag across the middle in the fourth quarter. He made the throw. But for the last 2-3 years, Tennessee has been real mediocre, and if you don't have the lead, you can't pound this monster Derrick Henry. There's calls for, hey, let's get Derrick Henry the ball more in the passing game. You see what he can do with a lot of dump off screens, but he's not a guy you're going to have running wheel routes and option routes out of the backfield, and he's not going to do it. Maybe next year they get him more involved, but to me, I always see fans, they watch the playoffs, they don't watch everything that happened in the regular season, and then they go into a fantasy draft and they'll say man, remember what Derrick Henry did those last few games of the season when I was watching? And it's yeah, you think defensive coordinators are watching that too? Right. Everyone is just going to sell out and just try to stop Derrick Henry. Is he going to have big games? Sure. But in fantasy football, if he's not catching passes, and he doesn't score a touchdown, he's going to have a lot of 9-point weeks. Yeah. It's oh, great, he ran for 85 yards and didn't score. Well, good luck winning. I'd rather have a Christian McCaffrey who's catching 11 balls and he's also running for 90 yards. Right. Well, it's going to be a great Super Bowl. I won't ask you for a prediction. I'll wait for you to put it out on your own platform because I'm sure you'll have a Super Bowl prediction. It should be a good one between the San Francisco and Kansas City. I think we'll all be looking forward to that. We got to wait a week. We got to do a Pro Bowl first, right? And can't wait for that.
So, but I want to thank I want to thank you, Brian, for coming on and joining us and letting me interview you, sort of pull the curtain back a little bit on the podcast that you do and talk about that and enjoy the sports talk. And anything you want to put out for the listeners? Do you have your next show? Do you have anything you want to promote before we wrap up?
Yeah, you could follow me on Twitter at Drake Fantasy. If you're on YouTube, and obviously you are if you're watching this, you can check us out. Search Fantasy Football Hustle Podcast. We've got some content over there, myself and Dwayne. I got a Facebook page, same thing, Fantasy Football Hustle, at FF Hustle on Twitter is the show. Yeah, we'll have a couple of new shows coming out soon. We're going to do our usual coaching changes show, which is really informative. My co-host Dwayne, that's kind of what he specializes in, is what do coaches do? How does that matter for fantasy? So a year ago, when Bruce Arians was hired in Tampa Bay, we're doing this show, and the first thing Dwayne says, he goes, buy Chris Godwin today. Chris Godwin's going to have a blow-up year because he plays that big slot role that Arians' offense always has, and that player always dominates. This was months before you started seeing other guys talk about it on fantasy Twitter, and he was right. So
big time.
Yeah, so check us out over at the Fantasy Football Hustle, and we'll see what goes on here. Maybe we'll have even a Syracuse basketball show to talk about this disaster of a team who may back their way into an NCAA tournament bid.
I thought that they were going to go winless in the ACC, but now all of a sudden they beat Virginia and then Virginia Tech on the road. And you know what? But what's going to happen? As the downtrodden Syracuse fans that we can be, sometimes they're going to lose 5 games in a row against teams they should beat or something.
Sure.
They'll take this momentum and throw it away. I hope not.
I don't see anybody that I go like, Syracuse should beat this team. It's like, you don't have a point guard. You don't have a center. You have very little depth. Like, you shouldn't beat anybody, really. I mean, the ACC is just really bad.
Boeheim's been shooting the lights out, though. Like I watched the game. I watched the highlights. I did not catch the game 2 days ago or 1 day ago, whenever it was. But he can shoot, and that's all you need in basketball these days. Is a couple guys that can shoot, and you're in a game. So,
if they don't shoot 40% from 3, they're not going to win.
Right.
If they do, they can beat anybody. Because really, college basketball is not great. You look every week. There's a new number 1. I think. Yeah. Saturday at the end of the week, like there were 6 losses in the top 5. Yeah. And something like, so it's just, who knows? Good luck in your brackets this year, man. Like that's gonna be madness.
Yeah, you know what? I've almost stopped doing it. I think I don't look forward to it as much as I used to, because it really, as a sports guy, I like to think that I know a little bit about something. And when I fill out these brackets, and I usually it's a grease fire after the first round, I'm like, screw it. And it's just because there's so much unpredictability with these teams now, because you got a lot of freshmen. It's just hard to pick. I mean, we finally had a 16 beat a 1 a couple years ago. It was coming. It was coming. Just because of all of the again, because of how much the rosters turn over from year to year now.
And you can't, we talked about it as parents. I can't sit here and tell you that I'm watching Auburn basketball and Baylor and Texas Tech and these teams that are going to the final. Like, Auburn went to the Final Four? What? Right. Yeah, like, give me a break. Okay, good for them. And it was funny. They were just in the top 4 and got blown out 2 straight games by 20 plus. Right. But that's college basketball for me. It's going to be wild. I mean, North Carolina has like 1 win in conference. Yeah. It's not even, guys aren't even leaving to go to the NBA anymore. They're just leaving to go pro. Like, even if they're not going to get to the NBA, they're like, you know what? Well, whatever. I'll go play in Australia or Spain and make some money, and I'll continue to develop, and teams will still find me there if I'm playing well. Yeah. And that's where it's at right now. The guy who left Syracuse last year, the Canadian kid, I'm forgetting. O'Shea Brissett. Yeah. He left early. He wasn't going pro. He wasn't going to be in the NBA. He knew it. There was no board anywhere in North America that had him projected to be a first or second round pick. And I don't know where he is now. I'm assuming he's playing in a foreign country, and I probably should have done some research on that before I opened my big mouth, but he went to go pro.
Not necessarily the NBA, but just to go pro because he can go make some money somewhere else and can continue to develop. And I think there's a lot of guys that are doing it because you see how many guys are leaving early. It's more than can be drafted. So, they're just saying, I'll go play in Spain and I'll go make, 50,000, 75,000 over there and be good.
I'm trying to look up where he is. I think he's in the Raptors.
Is he in the D League or what they call it now? The G League, Gatorade. If he's doing that,
I think he might be on the roster. He might be on the Raptors roster.
Is he really? Is it because he's Canadian? Do they give like one Canadian exemption roster spot in up there for the Raptors?
Yeah, I'm looking right here. He's all the way. He was on the Clippers for a minute. Now who knows?
So he's bouncing around. Well, anyway, he didn't make the money he thought he was going to make getting drafted.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right. Like you said, we could probably talk college hoops, Syracuse hoops for a while. Let me let you go. Thank you again for hopping on for the viewers. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to me and to Brian. Give it to me again, Brian. The YouTube channel
at the Fantasy Football Hustle Podcast.
All right, check those out. Do subscribe, please. For anybody who's watching on my channel, keep an eye out. This week, we're going to be continuing the 2020 projection videos, and we're probably going to have something about the Hall of Fame tomorrow. We'll see how that plays out. And thank you for watching. Brian, thank you for coming on.
Thanks, my friend. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you guys soon.